Protection Paladins are some of the most versatile tanks that you can play. There is no other tank that has quite as many tricks up its sleeve as a Protection Paladin, and this is a guide for beginners in patch 10.2, otherwise known as Season 3 of Dragonflight. With absolutely no information overload, I am going to help you get the ball rolling. To start off, let's look at the stat priority. Now, of course, first and foremost, you are going to be looking at getting eye level upgrades over everything else. But if you do happen to have to choose between two items at the same eye level, this is my priority pyramid. And think of this like a food pyramid where the largest part, the biggest part at the bottom, is what you want the most of, and then the least amount at the top. So going to start off, we're going to want as much haste as possible, then it's going to be mastery, then crit and or verse. As I said before, Protection Paladins have an exceptional toolkit at their command, and these are some of the cooldowns and utilities that I'm going to be showing you today that you can make the most of. Now, what I will say is that once you're more comfortable with the specialization in 10.2, that you look through your spell book at all the different spells and abilities you have to familiarize yourself even further with what you have in your arsenal. But these are the core ones that I want to make you aware of today. First of all, at the top here, we have Blessing of Protection. This is going to grant physical immunity to a party member. And when I say immunity, I really mean it. So do be careful. As a tank, you're actually not ever going to want to put this on yourself, because enemies won't actually attack anyone with BOP on them. And it's going to basically put all of your threat to 0. Then we have Divine Shield. This is a personal defensive, and it's going to grant you personal immunity, and it's also going to taunt all nearby enemies. Now going on to the bottom here, we've got Lay on Hands. Heals a friendly target for 100% of your health. This is an absolutely gargantuan heal. Then we have Ardent Defender, and this is going to reduce all damage taken and can actually prevent you from death. A few more on this next slide. We've got Bastion of Light, which means that your next 3 Shields of the Righteous are free. More on what that actually is when we go through the rotation. We've got Guardian of Ancient Kings, which is simply going to reduce your damage taken by 50%. Very simple personal defensive here. And then we have Sentinel. Again, I'm going to go through this one a bit more when we actually go into the core rotation, because this one is just crazy and does about a million different things. Last but not least, let's look at the utilities we have at our disposal. First of all, we've got Divine Steed. This is actually going to mount you in combat on your Divine Steed and give you a speed increase while in or out of combat. Then we have auras. The main one we're going to be using here is Devotion Aura, and this is actually going to reduce the damage taken by your party. Then we've got Rebuke, which is basically the Paladin's interrupt or kick, which is going to interrupt the enemy's spellcasting. We have Intercession, which is a Paladin's battle res, meaning you can resurrect somebody in combat, which is really useful. And then last but not least, again, we have Cleanse Toxins, which is going to cleanse all poison and disease. Do mind my mistake up there on Divine Steed. It doesn't do a D-spell. It is what I said previously. Sorry about that little error on my presentation there. Looking at the talents, this is the build here that I recommend. Now, I will say this is a beginner build, and it is geared a little bit more towards Mythic Plus for overall better versatility. I will put an import string down below in the description if you would like to use this. I'm not going to go through every single individual talent, but there are a few key things I'm going to be talking about. Again, make sure to familiarize yourself once you are a lot more comfortable with the rotation and specialization. Now we're actually in game. This is the UI I use. Of course, you don't have to follow it. Mine is a bit complex. This main weak aura here, I will mention, I've put a link down in the description to this as well. This is a really, really useful one, and it basically just puts all of your useful information right in the middle for you in front of your face. Now, we do actually have another resource as a prop pally, and you can see here I'm building some up here. This is Holy Power. Things like your Judgment here are going to generate Holy Power, and then things like your Shield of the Righteous at number 2 on the action bar are going to spend Holy Power. It's quite simple. You can have up to 5 Holy Power. Some are going to make it, some are going to spend it. Simple as. So to start going through the actual rotation itself, the main thing we're actually going to want to be doing is putting down Consecration here. And this is going to deal damage and heal you while you are standing in it, and it's going to damage everything in that area. And our 2 and 4 set bonus from tier 31 in patch 10.2 is going to heavily impact our consecration. More on that in a minute. And the other thing we're going to want to do is use our Shield of the Righteous as much as possible. And we're going to want to use this to make sure we're not capping on holy power. Basically, what our Shield of the Righteous does is it is going to spend free holy power, going to slam enemies in front of you with our shield, causing holy damage and increasing our armor for 4.5 seconds. It's also going to increase your strength and stamina by 2%, and this will stack up to 3. This is a really useful ability here, and we're going to be using this to make sure we're not capping on our holy power. This is our main holy power spender. Then we have Judgment. This is going to deal damage and cause them to take more damage from our next holy power ability, for instance, our Shield of the Righteous. We then have Hammer of Wrath. This is going to hurl a hammer doing damage, and it's only usable at enemies with 20% health. This is going to generate holy power. We then have Avenger's Shield. And by the way, you are going to use these in this priority, in this order on the action bar. So we have Avenger's Shield, hurling a shield at your enemy, dealing damage, interrupting and silencing the non-player target, and then it will jump to 4 additional nearby enemies. It's also going to deal additional damage within 5 yards. And then last but not least here, we have our Blessed Hammer. Throws a Blessed Hammer that spirals outward, dealing damage and reducing the next damage they deal to you by a certain amount. And this is also going to generate holy power. And I will say this has 3 charges, and it looks like this. You can see it spiraling out from me here. So just to recap on that basic rotation here, we have Consecration, put this down at all times to make sure we're standing in it. Then we have Shield of the Righteous. You're going to use this to give yourself a Absorb Shield, and you are also going to use this to dump your holy power. Then we have our Judgment, which is going to generate holy power as well. Hammer of Wrath we're going to use when they're at 20% health or under. Then we have our Avenger's Shield, which is going to sort of ping out and do more damage. It's also going to shield you by the damage you have dealt. We last have Blessed Hammer, which is going to spiral out, dealing damage and generating holy power as well. As you can see here, the rotation for a Protection Paladin really is quite simple and straightforward, and it's not actually unusual that you won't have anything to press. So you're basically just going to press whatever is coming off cooldown next, and in this priority order as I have shown you. One thing to note, of course, is that when you put your Consecration down, when you put it down again, it is going to overwrite it. So there's not going to be 2 up at a time. You can see here, that one is going to disappear, and then this one is going to appear. And again, always make sure you are standing in it. And the reason for that is because of our 2 and 4 set from this season. What our 2 set this season is going to do is that when you use Judgment, it is actually going to give you a stack of something called Sanctification. This is going to reduce your damage taken by 2% per stack, and once it reaches 5 stacks, it's going to empower your next Consecration, which is, if you've forgotten, the one that we're putting down on the ground. This is going to increase the radius, and it's also going to increase massively the damage and healing done by your Consecration. And when your empowered Consecration ends, the stacks of Sanctification will then be reset. The 4 set bonus is going to mean that when you are standing within an empowered Consecration, your abilities have a chance to deal 40% bonus damage or healing as fire. And that is how the set bonus works this season. And that is the basics for Protection Paladin. A few other little things. One thing I did mention before is our Sentinel, the one cooldown that I didn't actually go into. This is going to call upon the light, and you're going to gain 15 stacks of Divine Resolve, increasing your maximum health and reducing your damage taken. And after 10 seconds, you'll begin to lose 1 stack per second, but each free holy power spent will delay the loss of your next stack by 1 second. Remember, the main holy power spender we're using is Shield of the Righteous. While active, your Judgment is going to generate 1 additional holy power. That's this one here, remember, that we're going to be using to gain those Sanctification stacks for our set bonus. And your damage and healing is increased by 20%, and your Hammer of Wrath may be cast on any target, which is this one here that we can usually only use at below 20% health. And then we can use this whenever the hell we like while Sentinel is up. So I hope that was fairly straightforward. Don't forget, I also have done every other class guide for patch 10.2, so make sure to click subscribe below. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to join my Discord, where we have a community of very knowledgeable people playing all sorts of specializations and classes who are always happy to discuss and help.